What advantages does this auction format have?
It has a number of advantages. First of all, it's a very simple price discovery process that we understand quite well. And hopefully that came out in the illustration. When I'm auctioning just a single item, it's especially simple. And essentially what you want to do, at least in a standard auction, would be bid up to your value, your maximum willingness to pay. It's a little bit more complicated in this context because the buyer's payment is going to be dispersed among the sellers, and that can create an incentive for the seller to potentially either raise or lower their bid from what they would do otherwise. It can go both ways. If you have a very low value, then you may have an incentive to bid above your value slightly. If you have a higher value, then you certainly want to bid below your value, and the reason is that losing is, you're not actually a loser, you're a winner, you're just a seller rather than a buyer. So the advantage is a very simple price discovery process which reveals the preferences of the parties and has very high efficiency, and this has been demonstrated in the laboratory, both for the standard auction and for the case of the applicant auction, in which all the money stays within the parties. Now, when we have 2 items, or even 100 items, it's all the same, and really just as easy in the auction system to deal with 10 or 20 or 30 or even 100 items as 2. It's just going to be, each item is going to be a row in the user interface that the bidder is looking at. There'll be one for the sunglasses, one for the phone, one for whatever other domains they might be eligible for. Now, the second advantage is that the simultaneous ascending auction, you have this wonderful price discovery, but then you also get to express substitute preferences. So it might be that, maybe instead of this pair of Maui Jims, I've got one pair of Maui Jims and one pair of another Maui Jims of different style, and so then I would have 2 types of sunglasses, and you only want 1 pair of sunglasses. So you want one or the other. Those would be substitutes. Well, when we do it simultaneously, you're going to be able to see the prices and then sort of pick which one you want to go for. Alternatively, if it's a phone and the sunglasses, you might realize, look, I'm going on a trip, I need sunglasses, and I also need a phone. And so that these are actually complements. The 2 together is worth more than just one or the other. So in that case, you'd bid for both. The other thing is you might have, say, a budget constraint. So you can afford one or the other, but you can't afford both. So the simultaneous ascending auction will let you manage your budget constraint. Similarly, you might have portfolio constraints, which basically says, oh, we want some number of domains from one class and some from another, travel, and some from some other industry, and your portfolio constraints could be realized.
So what happens if after the auction is complete, the winner fails to pay the amount that they bid?
Excellent question. That's what we call default. So if the buyer defaults, they fail to make the settlement. Now they're going to be given some time. What we would do is specify the number of days after the auction close at which time the money had to be that's due has to be wired to the escrow account that's in control of the trustee, the settlement agent. If that money is not wired as required in the certain number of days, let's say 8 business days from the close of the auction, the bidder would be in default, and what would happen is they would lose their deposit. And that's what motivates them to make sure that they can make the payment in time, because they otherwise have this large penalty of losing their funds. And so there's, in the plan, there's tentatively a deposit requirement of 20%. Now the 20% is something that we're going to think about. Maybe it should be 15% or 10% or 25%, but there is always a deposit requirement held in escrow and managed by the trustee, and that is to make the bids binding commitments. So that yes, it's possible for somebody to default, but it's definitely not in their interest, and they will bid in such a way to avoid the default.
What if we feel that this process is being largely determined by the largest applicant?
So, the four objectives that we started with, efficiency, transparency, simplicity, and fairness, these are the objectives that the auction design team, myself and my colleagues, will pursue relentlessly. So we agree with these objectives, we like these objectives, and we're independent. We have no contractual or other relationship with any of the applicants. We certainly have spoken to the applicants because we need to speak to the applicants to understand the domain business. But no one can dictate terms, and that is exactly as it should be to satisfy both the efficiency and the fairness objective. If the rules were stacked in favor of one party, whether it be the largest party or the smallest party, it would be a bad design and would compromise efficiency. And the reason for that is that if it's stacked in favor of the largest players, then the small players don't want to participate. And quite frankly, without unanimous participation, we can't auction the domain. So we need everyone to participate. So the auction has to be fair for everybody. Small players, big players. Now, if one applicant has good ideas about how the process should be designed to best achieve the objectives of efficiency, fairness, transparency, and simplicity, then they can make those arguments, and the design team is very responsive and receptive to such arguments.